Alrighty, Shalom. For I start off like the first and foremost, give all honor, glory, and praise to our Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. Double honor to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, taught us His truth and rule well, and are the true leaders of the nation of Israel, which consist of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, as well as you Israelite foreigners scattered abroad. Shalom to the hopeful elect. All right, Tabernacle of David, which is scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, I'm the brother Shamaria, back with another lesson. All right, and wanted to touch on how Latin Kings, all right, which is a street gang. Okay. Dealing with the Northern Kingdom. They issued an order targeting federal agents in Chicago. Okay, because you have these ICE raids going on. So, they put out a hit to target, ICE in Chicago. And you can see how things are amping up to the point that, martial law is going to be underway. All right. Civil unrest is underway for the society. And something that the elder apostles and others on down have been saying, okay, is that there will be civil war. There will be civil unrest in this society, in this place, America, man. All right. And the scriptures speak on it too. But I'm going to read a little bit on this article. This is from ourquadcities.com. From News Nation, Customs and Border Protection officials said that Latin King street gang members have issued a shoot-on-sight order targeting agents involved in immigration operations in Chicago, News Nation has learned. Officer agents are reminded to maintain heightened situational awareness when conducting enforcement activities, the agency's internal warning said. It says, news of the alert comes after shots were reportedly fired at federal agents during an immigration operation. It says during an immigration enforcement operation in the city's Little Village neighborhood on Saturday. It says the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, says a group of people also threw a paint can and bricks at a Border Patrol vehicle. So, what do you think? All right, and you have this as there's tensions going on with Venezuela. All right, Central America. Now, let's just say, they go to war with Venezuela. They go to war with, these Central American states. What do you think is going to happen to you so-called Venezuelans and so-called Central Americans, all right, over here in the U.S.? They're going to detain you. They're going to put you in the concentration camps. All right? Because even with, the ICE operations that are going on now, okay, the mass deportation and raids going on right now, all right, these devils are putting hell on you Northern Kingdom tribes, man. But as we said, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse, man. All right, martial law is going to be a thing in this society very soon. Now, martial law itself, all right, means military control. The military replaces civilian authorities like police, courts, elected officials. Right? Yeah, there's the suspension of civil rights, freedom of movement, speech, or protection from unlawful detention. All right. But pretty much what defines martial law is military authorities, ruling over a civilian population. And then, that's usually imposed during extreme emergencies when, quote unquote, normal civilian government is unable to function effectively. And if you remember, Trump, early in his presidency, even before, he was throwing out things like the Alien Enemies Act. He was throwing out things like the Insurrection Act of 1807. And those scriptures talk about how they frame mischief by law. I'm gonna start with that. Yeah, Salak, this is Psalm 94 and 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law. The throne of iniquity is speaking about Esau, Edom. Okay? That word for mischief is Aimal, which says trouble, grievousness, iniquity, perverseness, wickedness. By law. Okay, the word for law is statute, ordinance, something prescribed. Due. Enactment, decree, ordinance, law in general. Right, man, and we know that these devils, they use something called the Hegelian dialectic, okay, which is problem, reaction, solution. So they create the problem, they get the reaction, and they come with the solution. All right, but, this whole Latin Kings incident, you have the Latin Kings, which, again, is the Northern Kingdom gang. They're coming out and saying that they've issued a hit on ICE, all right, federal agents over there in Chicago. Now, who's to say that ain't just a narrative that Esau is spinning out there to target you so-called Latinos? All right, because there was an arrest made real quick. So Latin Kings gang. The almighty Latin King and Queen Nation is a gang active primarily in the United States. The gang was founded by Puerto Ricans in Chicago, Illinois, in 1954. The Latin Kings are one of the largest Hispanic and Latino street and prison gangs worldwide. All right, so that, just some background on who the Latin Kings are. It's from CNN. The Department of Homeland Security says agents were shot at amid chaotic day of immigration enforcement operations in Chicago area. But let me see. Yeah, you know, there was an arrest made. I was seeing there was an arrest made, and they said it had to do with they said it was an Issacharite connected to the shootings. But yeah, like I was saying, who's to say that Esau ain't just have agent provocateurs out there, because we know that this devil does get down like that. All right, and he's been exposed for doing so. Having agent provocateurs stir up shit to run with their narratives. Going back to that Psalm 94 and 20. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by law? Now, it came out that the Trump administration had been, acting in ways that, are pretty much on the line of defiance. All right? Because, the administration itself has been appealing and requesting stays or seeking reversal of decisions. All right. And that's raised concerns about them, defying court orders, and because you've had a lot of resistance. You got a lot of sanctuary cities, that they're trying to push against Trump's rule of having ICE in these large scale deportation raids, which shows you that Esau's kingdom is divided. Yahushua said a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. All right, now when you deal with I myself and brothers have gone into a couple times something called the PAC. So like the PCA, which is the Posse Comitatus Act. All right. Oh, let me grab this, because I remember brothers was speaking on this. But Donald Trump recently, all right, ordered a quick reaction force of 500 troops per state. So this is from thehill.com. It says the National Guard is building a quick reaction force of some 23,500 troops trained in crowd control and civil disturbance, that can be ready to deploy to U.S. cities by early next year, according to a leaked memo reported by multiple outlets on Wednesday. This is the October 8th memo signed by National Guard Bureau Director of Operations Major General Ronald Burkett. Orders the Guard from nearly every U.S. state, Puerto Rico, and Guam to train the 500 service members. States with smaller populations such as Delaware will have 250 troops in its force, while Alaska will have 350 and Guam will have 100, task and purpose reported. So it says a previous Pentagon memo issued in September and revealed by The Guardian had mandated that the Washington, D.C. National Guard create a specialized military police battalion within it dedicated to ensuring safety and public order in the nation's capital as the circumstances may necessitate. So, expect a beefened up, military presence in this place. We told you martial law was going to come. Martial law was going to happen. All right. But as I was saying, like, I'm gonna retouch on that Posse Comitatus. Let me first grab Daniel 8 and 25. So it says Daniel 8:25, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. All right, which we know this is speaking about Antiochus IV Epiphanes. But this applies to how these devils are moving now, because, you know, they're operating through, by the same playbook. Deceit. All right, when you read that word for craft in the Hebrew, and through his policy, right? Because these devils have, all these prescribed articles of legislation out there, and, laws and directive, directive orders out there, which are grievous, man. Through his policy, he shall also cause craft in the Hebrew, marma, deceit, treachery. He shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. Right, because remember, Antiochus Epiphanes, his name meant God manifest. He was a proud devil, man. Right, when you read up, it goes into the abomination that make it desolate, and how, he had dealt with our people, man. It was during the time of the Greeks, Antiochus laid heavy persecution upon our people and forced us into, the Greek customs. It says, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. Yeah, all this in the guise of peace and safety, right? He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand, which happened, when you read in the book of Maccabees, Antiochus Epiphanes was smote. The Heavenly Father smote him with the incurable disease. He was basically rotten inside out. But, it says, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, which is deceit and treachery, subtlety. All right? Through their policy, the various legislation and laws that, again, they prescribed. That's why Donald Trump has publicly signaled on multiple occasions that he planned on invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807. Again, something that was prescribed that goes way back. But they need the right conditions, the justification to invoke said articles of legislation. So they could very well be setting up scenarios to forward their agenda, man. Which is coming down on, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans primarily. All right, but they're setting it up to come at, all these people in America. Eventually they're going to mandate the chip. It's Isaiah 10:1. Woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that right grievousness which they have prescribed. All right, going into those laws and articles of legislation that they've written going way back. Insurrection Act 1807. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a U.S. federal law select that empowers the President of the United States to nationally deploy the U.S. military and to federalize the National Guard units of the individual states in specific circumstances, such as the suppression of civil disorder, of insurrection, and of armed rebellion. So there you go. All right. Now you also had something called the Posse Comitatus Act, which that limited the use of the army and the Air Force to enforce domestic laws unless authorized by Congress or the Constitution. But guess what? It didn't apply to civil federal law enforcement like FBI, ICE, right? Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ATF, the DEA, etc. All right? But what have they done? They basically, militarized ICE. All right? Now, it also doesn't apply to National Guard units when they're under state authority, all right, or serving under a governor. Doesn't apply to the Coast Guard because it has both law enforcement and military roles. So, the federalization of ICE isn't a violation of Posse Comitatus. It's already a civilian federal agency under the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. So it was never bound to the PCA because it's not part of the armed forces. All right. But see, going back to that Psalm 94, all right, how they frame this shit by law, there's always going to be some loophole or workaround. There's always going to be some workaround what's unconstitutional, illegal, or, politically unprecedented, quote unquote. Because this is their kingdom. Right? And these devils are crafty, like we read. It shall cause, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. That's always been the playbook of Edom. Deceit and treachery. All right? Scriptures say the words of his mouth were sweeter than butter, but war was in their heart. And they've waged war against you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. So, this is their last hurrah. Pursuing Revelation 12:12, the devil shall come down having great wrath because he knoweth that he had but a short time. He's on his way out. So he's going to try to fight tooth and nail to keep his rulership in there. All right? And by doing so, he figures, the Lord's people are the ones directly opposing that. So he wants to root us out of the earth. All right? But the beauty of it is, the Lord isn't going to let it happen like that because he has his remnant, an elect remnant of the nation of Israel that he's going to deliver in these times. So, with that, in closing, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to our Heavenly Father and his only begotten Son, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to our apostles and others, great millstone, taught us the truth and rule well, and peace and blessings to the elect. To the next I say, Shalom.